What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Steelhead Alley podcast. I'm Kyle, and today we're kicking off episode 11, part 1 of the third and final trip recap of our winter steelhead season. This trip started deep in winter mode, cold temps, locked up runs, and a lot of ice to deal with right out of the gate. We spent the early part of day 1 breaking ice and searching for fish, but it quickly became clear that the water we started on just wasn't going to give us what we needed. So we made the call to move. A quick pivot to a different section, fresh water, and a reset on the approach changed everything. Once we found fish, it turned into exactly the kind of day you hope for when you're willing to grind in the winter. Insane action, constant hookups, and that feeling of finally being dialed in after earning every inch of it. Cold hands, frozen gear, and fish that were more than willing to play. This episode is all about that first day, knowing when to move, trusting the decision, and capitalizing when you finally intersect with the right water and the right fish. We've got a good one lined up for you today, so now, let's get into it. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Steelhead Alley podcast. We're jumping into episode 11, part 1 of our third and final trip of the year, that late winter trip, and it was a good one. In fact, it was an incredible trip. Best trip in years. We had an absolute blast once we found fish and we got into them. I'm doing this one solo today with the schedule, and we fished till Monday. Just didn't really align to record this with everyone. So I'm going to dive into at least part 1 here by myself. We'll see if we can get Pono or Dave back in here to finish that up and talk about the second half of the trip. So as we were getting into this late winter trip, we usually try to get one in the late winter. And usually that Martin Luther King weekend is really, really nice for us because we have that Monday off. So it kind of aligns. We don't have to take off from work. But we shift the trip, right? Getting up there now Friday night, late night, and then fishing until Monday morning, hopefully, before we make that trek back. Group of 4 this time. Good number, especially for that late winter, because, you know, you're doing a lot of ice breaking, a lot of searching, kind of like our trip number 2, a lot of ice breaking as well. So we had a group of 4, and the crazy thing about this trip was leading up to this, we got that amazing snow melt, we got that warm up, we got the rain, because the lake and the streams were locking up. The lake was freezing up, the streams were freezing up, and it came at a perfect time. That week of, again, still warm weather, looked amazing. And then that Arctic Blitz hit. So that Arctic Blitz, you know, kind of came out of nowhere or kind of last minute. And at first it's like, okay, they're calling for 5 to 6 inches of snow up there. That's really not a big deal. Get some snow, cool. We love the snow up there, love fishing in the snow in general for trout. But not only did it snow, the wind got insane, the temperatures dropped. I think fields were clocking at like negatives, -2, -3. And within 24 hours, 1.5, 2 days before we're supposed to go fishing, stuff's freezing up again rapidly. Sunday and Monday were looking pretty darn cold, but Saturday looked good, high 20s, low 30s. So we knew we'd have some decent windows. This is the way it goes. We're used to this stuff. It kind of happens more often than not, but we were going either way. Again, the weekend looked good. It wasn't enough snow to keep us away. It was just now we have to be cognizant that this trip went from open water now to breaking ice. It's late winter steel, so that's what we expect anyway. So Stump went up a little early. He was going to head up Friday morning originally, fish and do some recon fish, potentially a couple different streams depending on how things went. And it was still very, very cold Friday, and it was still really windy. So he decided to take his time going up there and went to just look at some streams and look at some water. We thought we had some recon ahead of time. Again, that changed with the weather, with that Arctic Blitz. I still had kind of a plan in my head, what I was thinking, where we would start. Pretty confident either way it would be decent water and fish would be there to start us off. And so anyway, myself and Dave hit the road, and then we are picking up Pono. And I was really pumped that Pono was able to make this trip. It's something we've been hoping for. He didn't get to go at all last year. He had to get back surgery. He was on the mend for a while, right in the heart of winter and steelhead season. And then he didn't get to go for most of this season, the first 2 trips, because he has a 4-month-old. He's been in the heart of it. Kid number 2, that's a lot. That's a lot of work. So we were really pumped that he was able to work this out and come on this trip. So it was kind of elevating that excitement. We knew Pono was itching. He was ready to rock. And then all of a sudden, crazy snowfall was coming, and they were worried about the in-laws. And luckily, that also worked itself out. Kudos to Pono's significant other out there. Really helped, really pushed for it, and they got it done and grabbed Pono at his house, loaded up, and then we had that remaining 4 hours to go. Hit the road, make the trip up. Standard, we get there. It's about 11:30, 11:45 at night. Really cool Airbnb. There's another new spot, and it was a perfect setup. I really loved the location of this house. I loved the layout of it. It just worked really well for what we were doing. So we get in and unload quick. I know Dave kind of hits the sack pretty early, and then me and Pono, we stay up and have a beer and rig up, put on some Stanley's ice off paste again. Saturday was most likely going to be our best day based off of weather, off of temps. I alluded to that, but we still wanted to prepare, put some ice off paste on. I mentioned that in our last trip. It made a difference. You have to reapply it, and it's one of those things that the more you apply it, the better off you are. But it definitely makes a difference. And we saw that, especially as I get into the second half of this trip when it got much colder. Nothing's perfect. Trying to keep that ice off the guides, keeping your lines when it's that cold, when the water's that cold. It's inevitable. But if something can help, even for a couple drifts, I'm all for it. So we were rigging up, tying up, putting the paste on, and kind of having a beer and just catching up. It's been a minute. So we have a good time chopping it up for about an hour. And I think it was around 12:30 or so. We set a time limit. We didn't want to push it too late. Hit the hay. I wanted to be up pretty early based off of temps and everything. It was looking good. I had this idea of where I wanted to go. We have our favorites, and we target those favorites first and then kind of work our way based off of conditions, levels of the stream, and all that stuff. I wanted to go to one of the main spots from the first two trips that we had some of our most success. I figured waters over those trips as well had consistently looked the best. So in my head, let's start there. Odds are, we'll probably have to break some ice. I didn't expect too much. And then the four of us hopefully at least get into a fish each. Hopefully we all land one, get that skunk off, but at least you get that taste is a good way to start the day. And that kind of opens up the door to explore a little bit more, being a little bit more active in exploration because you found fish, you got that monkey off your back early. And I just find that it's always easier to explore and kind of branch out. If you have some of that information, try to find those fish quick and then go from there and expand and explore. So we do our breakfast, and it was a pretty cold morning, but it was going to raise up to low 30s in the day, which is perfect, especially for late January winter steelhead fishing. Oh, and something I wanted to mention, but something I've been doing, Stanley thermos, loaded up with some coffee, put it in my backpack, and that, honestly, these cold trips, December and this one, and it was probably lasting 7-8 hours at least, minimum. I had warm coffee pretty much all day. Until I finished it, it was warm. So I recommend, if you haven't thought of that, anything that you can keep a little bit warm out there just to warm your body, hits that core quick after you've been standing in that cold water. Again, something to think about. And then we switched it up at Mickey D's again. Mickey D's is the easy spot. It's open, it's close. Last time, Beeve, we switched it up with the sausage burritos. Paid off this time. They had the strawberry pies. Don't sleep on the strawberry pies, y'all. They're killer. Had to get one, had to load it up. And I'm telling you, that was the ticket. That set the stage. That set the day. It may not have set it to start, which we'll talk about here in a second, but it came back. I'm telling you, that was it. It paid off later on. I attribute to the pies. So anyway, we're driving to our spot. In my mind, I'm ready to rock. And I'm sure in Dave's mind as well, because he was with me for these couple trips. Should be fishing here. I'm expecting honestly a dozen fish minimum, hopefully 20 or so. Water conditions are a little bit higher than last trip in December, but they are prime flows, really good water, some clarity, so you could see shapes and bodies, especially with polarized glasses. So perfect conditions. Walking into the gorge, we load up, walking into the gorge, no cars. There was one set of footprints from a couple days ago. You could tell they were a little bit older, but that was it. So a lot of times that means no people, no fish. That hasn't proven to be true based off of our last couple trips, like I've said. So I'm even more pumped. No cars, no people. And right away, you can see some of the water looking in as you're making your way down, and it's icy. It's icier than we expect. And even the one run that we were going to go hit, you could kind of see some of it. It was very icy. I was surprised. So already that's something on my mind. But again, it's not that big of a deal. We break the ice and we fish. We do a little split up. Stump goes up. The three of us go down, and icier than the December trip, which I did not expect that. Similar, definitely, but it was icy. There was, only a 4 or 5 foot run through the middle of this big run that was open. So we're like, okay, whatever. That's surprising, but let's do our thing. Let's break this ice. Fast forward, it's me, Phil, and Dave. Phil is Pono. Didn't clarify that earlier, so we are breaking out. I go to the other side. I'm working that ice on the edge, pushing it down, getting some big shifts of ice. So we're clearing it pretty quick. And I keep looking. I got my glasses on. I go up on a higher part and I'm looking down. By this time, we should have seen a couple tails, a couple bodies moving. And I am surprised I haven't seen a fish, at least one. And there was this dark spot in the water that was a little bit deeper. So I was like, okay, maybe they're sitting in there and I'll get a better look here as we keep pushing the rest of this ice out. Keep pushing, keep moving. There wasn't a fish in there. And I looked for a minute. I say a minute, and I looked a lot longer than that. We were all kind of staring in the water. It even got to the point where we were fishing a little bit, but kind of working into the run just to see if we kicked a fish, spooked one. Nothing. This was as close to a guarantee as I thought it was going to be for the weekend in terms of finding fish, and they weren't there. Last 2 trips, fish in this run both times, and then fish above. It's like, okay, we're going to change our plans a little bit based off of this, but let's work our way to that next run, a couple 100 yards up or so. So we go up there, and it is just breaking ice for a while. There's a pretty big run, corner run, shoot section. Caught fish in it before, caught fish in it last trip, or the trip before that. It had more ice than the first run, and all 4 of us are breaking it, and again, no fish. So now, after spending the first hour breaking ice in these runs, it's like, all right, what do we do, guys? So in my head, I'm racking. I'm not panicking. It's not that, but depending on what we do next, we can make the right call or the wrong call. I don't want to mess that up for everyone, so it's in my head a little bit more like, man, if I make this decision and we go one place or switch streams, it could get worse. You know, it doesn't mean it'll get any better, and I'm making that call or a big part of that decision. I'll feel bad for that. So then we're all talking. Do we go upstream and hunt? Do we stay where we are and keep walking and keep searching and breaking? There's going to be fish somewhere. There's no question about that. They just weren't in this spot now. They really move in waves. More so in the last few years, we've noticed. Maybe that's a lack of numbers. Maybe that's a lack of fish, whatever you want to call it. The timing of the runs might be shifting. I've theorized on that. But more so, these fish are moving in waves and they're not spreading out nearly as much. At least that's the way it seems, where years ago, you could find a couple fish here, a couple fish there, pot of fish here, and then, oh, tail of that run, there's 2, tail of that run, there's 6. It doesn't seem to be like that, or we haven't noticed that, at least in the last few years, like I said. So do we keep moving? Do we go back to the cars? Do we drive up a little bit? Do we drive up really far and go way up and access water that way? Or do we head towards the mouth and check that out? You could go any way. Steelhead, their mode is to move upstream. That's the way I usually think. But at the same time, steelhead are running constantly. Even if it's a small run of fish, I believe they're basically running most of the time. Even in this late winter, if they have open water, they just got that warm water. They got open water, they got warmer water, they got flows. So at the same time, there was probably fresher fish moving in that lower section too. So that's the debate. That's what we're trying to figure out. Where should we go? We could do both. Do we start upstream and then move downstream? Do we start downstream and then move upstream? I think we would have been successful either way. I was a little worried about maybe going upstream and breaking a lot of ice and searching, doing more hunting than fishing. So I think we all kind of agreed, let's go downstream. Let's see what's down there. The water looks good. Once you break ice, it wasn't slushy. You just had to break ice, and we hiked back out, beeline it. I think there was a car or 2 there. 2 guys were getting out of their cars. They were ready to jump in. There was another car there, but I don't think we saw anyone around it or into the water when we got in. So Dave's going to go upstream from where we parked. And I'm like, okay, well, I want to explore downstream more just to see, are there fish there? I've never really been down to this section that much, maybe years ago. It's usually from this point we go upstream. So me and Phil decide to go hunt downstream, see if we can spot fish, work some runs, and probably head to the mouth. And honestly, within a couple minutes, Dave's already up there and he calls me and he spooked a small pot of fish. He said maybe a dozen or so, and we're like, yes. Thank goodness. We went from seeing 0 fish in multiple money runs to now seeing fish within a minute or 2 of getting in the water. Now we are all much more motivated again, kind of rejuvenated. Again, it is so early in our first day, but you want to find fish, right? So so me and Phil will just keep going downstream. You guys sit on those fish them, and we'll call you if we find any. And we go downstream, and there are 2 or 3 really juicy runs. Not super big, not super wide at all. They were more like small alleys or chutes pushing into the bank, some nice undercut water, some ice edges as well. And we worked them, I don't know, down this run, probably at least a half hour. I fished a run, then Phil came in behind me, and then I kept going, and he was fishing for a minute in that run for a while. I fished another run that looked really freaking good, and nothing. We weren't moving anything. We didn't see anything. You couldn't see all the fish. There's no question about that. But you could see a decent bit into the water. And I'm not going to lie. When you know there's fish somewhere, your buddies are into them, it's a little bit harder to keep searching. So we were moving a little bit faster than maybe we should. And in hindsight, based on how fish were hiding, really using the edge ice on these walls, I'll talk about that here in a bit, there's a good chance we just missed a couple fish down there. I'm guessing there was a couple in these runs, 1 or 2 at minimum. And we didn't fish them hard enough, and we didn't really break ice out down there. Oh, but odds are if we would have pushed more ice and broke stuff, I'm thinking we might have moved a fish or 2. But we didn't. And I went all the way to the mouth, looked around, fished a little bit, and then, I went back up, found Pono, and I was like, all right, man, see if these guys caught any. Hopefully they're already into some, and maybe we could jump in if there's enough there. And there's Dave and Stump fishing this run. I think Stump was in the water at the time. We get up there, and sure enough, Stump already hooked into 2 within that time frame. I don't think Dave hooked in any at that point. But right there, this is a great sign. Moving in the right direction, found fish. They're eating, right? And then it's only a matter of time. Let's work these fish. Let's rotate if we need to. It was really interesting the way these fish are sitting in this run under this bridge, and you'll see some of the footage whenever I get to it. I'm still working on our first trip, but it's coming. I do the podcast, I do the video editing, so I'm working on it. But anyway, at the tail of it, on the one corner, there's just maybe 5 inches of ice on the wall, shelf ice, pushing out into the creek, and they were just hiding under this edge. And once you focused, you could just see some dark spots in this water. Every now and then you could see 1 or 2 that kick out a wave, but they were hugging this wall so tight, and they were just some little deeper buckets of water too. Really, really cool spots to hold for them. But I'm telling you, if you would have walked 5 feet away from this run or anything away, you would have missed these fish. Unless you stepped into them and kicked them out, you didn't see them. They were that hidden. It was incredible. So we got lucky. So Dave was hugging that wall and must have spooked these fish, and that's how he was able to see them. So I'll take it, right? If that's how we're seeing them, wonderful. They'll cool down. It was amazing how they were using this shelf ice to hide, and then just the deeper spots in the water. But it's not a long run. It's a small 20, 30-foot run, but it's really skinny. It's only 2-3 feet wide of where you're drifting your flies. And so I'm like, all right, well, I'll go upstream and explore, because they got here, they saw fish, and they fished it. But they didn't have an opportunity to go up to the run right after it, which was really, really juicy, had a lot of ice on it. And then you keep going, and there was some really good water up above. Okay, I'll go explore where you guys are fishing. So I start going up to the next run. I'm walking on the shelf ice. It's pretty thick. And now this shelf ice is probably 3-4 feet wide where I'm walking on top of it. And I don't see anything. I don't see any fish. I didn't spook any. I was hoping maybe even walking on the ice, the sound of my steps might kick a couple out. Nothing. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'll just keep walking upstream. We'll probably break that ice out after the fact. I just want to keep moving. There was a lot of good water to check out. And as I'm walking up, the 2 guys that we saw get in around the same time as we did had actually beelined it up to that next big run. And so once I saw them, I was like, well, I'm not going to go past them yet at this point. I'll just go back and break out that ice. And at that time, Stump made a great move and decided to walk through that run, because there was about 4 feet of ice on the one side that I walked on. On the other side, there was a good bit of ice. Because he did that and was in the water, he spooked fish. I was there walking on top of the ice, didn't spook anything, didn't see anything. That's how easy it was to just walk right by what potentially could be fish. And he waves up and he's like, I just spooked fish. And I'm like, sweet, I didn't see anything kick out of there. I'm glad you walked through the middle of that run, or you were walking through it. He didn't have to walk through the whole thing. He was just at the tail, and that was enough for him to see and pop out. So, all right, let's break this edge ice and push it down. And so me and Stump were working that. Phil and Dave were fishing the bridge run. I think Phil might have lost one. So he got into one pretty early. Dave's with him. And it's one of those things, a lot of these runs, they have these whirlpools. We've talked about it in the past, and sure enough, you push ice, you break these pieces, and if it hits this edge, it kicks back and it starts circling in the center. So it took us a while to get all of the ice out of this run. It wasn't that big of a run. It was nice and deep and could clearly hold a good amount of fish, but it wasn't this huge, huge run or anything like that. It was more just a deep, deep riffle and run. But the ice kept pushing in. And then clearly those guys were breaking ice upstream because some would come down and get in our way. So it got to a point after a while, it's just like, all right, this is enough. Let's work around these little bits of ice that are still floating in the water, and let's get in there. The show starts after that. It was the hottest action we've had as a group in years. The bite was absolutely on fire. These fish were hungry once they settled down from breaking ice and pushing it, and they did not take long to settle. They were aggressive, hitting flies hard, different flies. They did tune on to the purple bead. Purple bead was the hot ticket all weekend. One of my favorite color beads to use. I tied on a couple different patterns, but a few of us were using similar flies with the purple bead. Stump had a new pattern he tied up which had purple bead and some orange and some other colors in it. They were on that hard. They were eating eggs. It was an absolute frenzy. They were hungry. So now you're figuring out there's quite a bit of fish in this run. You can't see them. You can see a couple tails here and there every now and then. You hook into one, they're spooking fish, but there's quite a bit of fish in here. While that run is cooling off, I decided to go under the bridge with Phil and Dave and check that out. I get into one and I lose it. Phil gets into one, he loses it. And then as that's happening, right after Pono loses his, you look upstream and Stump's already into one. We go upstream, he lands his first fish. Stump's already 1 for 3, I think. And it just doesn't stop. I jump in there and I get into an absolute crazy battle, really quick hookup right after Stump releases his fish. I lose that. And then I catch a nice jack, chromed up, gave a good fight. Those little guys can really rip. I had a bunch in a row. So as guys are like tying up their flies, I was able to just keep working this run. And within 5 minutes, I think I lost 3. And this third one was big. This is when we see all these fish. So it spooks this pod and you just see fish scatter. And we are all riding so high already. It's early in the morning, especially after how it started. And then you see a pod like this spook and you're like, oh my goodness, we're fishing this as long as we can, as long as they're biting, right? Then it's Dave's turn. He took a little bit of time. I think he foul hooked a couple. With this amount of fish, foul hooks are gonna happen. It's inevitable. So it took him a minute to get a good hook set into one. And then he finally did, but he starts fishing the other side of this run. He gets into one shortly after, he loses that. And then I'm finally able to land one. So I'm like 1 for 4 now, quick release, good fish. Skunks off for me, skunks off for Dave. And right after that, Pono lands his fish, all got the skunk off. It is hot. Within, 20, 30 minutes, this water's just going nuts. And then Stumps into another one and he lands his second one. So he's, again, into like 5 fish at this point. He releases his. And then I get another one on the board and it just keeps going. So Pono catches another fish, big fresh fish. My goodness, Pono caught some big fish. Stump caught some huge fish, but Pono's consistency of good fish was awesome. And to really highlight this frenzy that is starting, it's just awesome to see your crew catch fish like this. Stump's been going for a couple years now. Never had action like this for how conditions have lined up. Rain, snow, wind, ice. He's caught plenty of fish, but never had opportunities like this, a big group of fish, multiple spots of fish, and the bite is just nuts. Pono hasn't been out in the water for 1.5 years for Steelhead. He's into fish nonstop. Me and Dave have been hunting for big pods of fish for years, and again, we've had wonderful success. We've done great on these trips, but we've worked really, really hard on them. The payoff is always worth it, but sometimes a couple fish. This type of action, you're so overjoyed, netting fish for your friends, fish that get off, it doesn't matter. We lost a bunch of fish. I had a couple get off from tough net jobs, working downstream, running under shelf ice, doing backflips, the normal thing, and you just laugh. When you can laugh about a missed net job or a fish wrapping you and breaking off and you're laughing together, that's the way it was. It was awesome. It is hours of nonstop action to the point where we didn't really move. We searched a little bit just to do a little recon. The only 2 guys we really saw were upstream for a bit. They eventually moved, but the bite just kept happening. So we're not going to leave fish to find fish if the bite is happening. If they weren't eating, that'd be a different story. We would have moved much quicker to hunt, but they just didn't stop. So it would be 2 or 3 guys in this run and then a guy under the bridge. And then he'd give a holler, I'm in. Guy would walk down there, net that fish. And then most likely the guy that did the net would probably jump in that run. The other guy would come up, and it was kind of this rotation, like 2 and 2 or 1 and 3, and switching sides or going under the bridge to a completely different style run versus larger one was really fun too. And then we could all see each other. So we were not fishing together, but at the same time we were fishing together. So you still had this interactive element of seeing your friends all catching fish, which doesn't happen a lot of times. A lot of times when we're spreading out, 2 and 2, 3 and 2, whatever the numbers of our crew is, guys are splitting up a lot more and you're not seeing all these fish. You meet up eventually and you're like, yeah, I got 2 and that's kind of how it goes. So we got to all be together the whole trip. It made it that much better. You're there with your best friends, with your best fishing buddies, and you want to enjoy that together and see everyone just absolutely kill it. And that's how it went. It was crazy. It was honestly crazy. And then we're kind of hunting and rotating. And then it's kind of cool because below that run, there's these other side pockets and edges, and we're breaking some ice. I know Stump did a little ice breaking and searching. And all of a sudden he'd call up, there's 2 fish here. There's 5 fish under this ice I just broke. all in this area generally. So then we could start even bouncing around a little bit more, but still, again, within eye distance of each other, hunting these fish and kind of working, and it expanded it. You just kept finding these fish. You'd break out ice and push it down, and there's a couple, and it was special. It was really special. And by this time, I think I've landed like 3 or 4. I was hooking into a ton of fish, just the way it goes. My land rate was not high that day. Did not matter. I could have landed 1 fish all day for how much action we had. It really didn't matter. And a lot of people were losing fish. We all lost quite a bit of fish, a testament to how many fish we hooked into. I think Stump probably had the best land rate. He seemed to land the most. Pono landed a bunch, and it just kind of kept going back and forth, rotating. Guy breaks off. Okay, next guy in the run. Guy catches a fish downstream. Okay, go net that. I'll jump in that run with him. You caught a fish. You lost a fish. Okay, next guy. We had a great flow to it. We had a great system, just naturally kind of letting everyone get in this water, whether Dave was across the stream, whether we were rotating on the same side. It worked out really good. When there's that many fish and they're biting like that, it's easy to rotate because we're all having a great time. Well, Pono's into like 4 or 5, lost a couple, and then Stump hooks into one. I want to tell this story because it was awesome. I love these fish. He hooks into a jack, so nothing big, and it's in the video. But he's downstream, so I walk down there to net it for him, and it's probably like an 18-inch fish, if that, 17, 18 inches. But it is so dime bright. It was probably in the water for a half hour. It could have been 6 hours. I don't know. But it was so fresh, it was reflective. And when you see ones that are that fresh, it just kind of sets itself apart from the other fish, chromers, even fresh fish. This was a step above. It literally sparkled in the sun. I love seeing something different like that, and me and Stump were both kind of blown away by how bright it was. And then again, it just keeps going, guys. So now going a little bit slower, taking our time because we're all in a frenzy, and Stump ends up landing a really big fish, and he lands another big fish upstream too. Stump caught the big fish of the weekend, even bigger on Sunday, which we'll talk about in the next episode. So now we're getting to that like lunchtime point. I think it was like 12:30, 1 o'clock, and I think we were all riding that high, and it was like, all right, it's time for a beer. Let's do a little celebrating. Let's eat some lunch. Rotate, guy fishing or two in this run. I think Phil runs to the truck, grabs some beers from everyone, do the cheers. Really, I think just a moment of obviously celebration, but a moment of like clarity where we're all kind of like, cheers, looked at each other like, this is it, boys. This is it. It's been an absolute grind. Not only just this year, last year, years in a row, trips in a row, and we haven't hit fish like this, and it was awesome. So I think that cheers was like symbolic of we did it, and let's keep it going. And the action eventually does taper off a little bit. It stays hot for probably another 2 hours or so. But then it gets really cool from a weather standpoint. All of a sudden, our phones are going off. Snow squall. The alert, the alarm's going, mine goes off, I know Pono's goes off, and we're like, what the heck is going on? Nothing's happening, but the skies are looking darker, like snow could be coming, and then all of a sudden, 10 minutes later, after these alarms go off, we just get smoked by a snow squall. It was awesome. Just good snow, just pushing, coming down. It didn't last too long, maybe a half hour, maybe a little bit longer than that. And it was cool because, you're not seeing any people. It's kind of like blurring your vision all around. You almost feel like you're in a different area completely. And it was funny. Phil and Stump, they just kept riding it out. They just kept chatting and talking. And then me and Dave went under the bridge because we weren't that far from it, just to kind of stay out of it a little bit. Still sipping my beer. Then eventually, we start slowly getting back into the water after a little bit while it's snowing. I love fishing in the snow, and it keeps going. Even while it's snowing, I lose one under the bridge, gets off quick. I know Dave caught a really, really big fish under the bridge as well. So that's his 3rd or 4th landed or something by now. And it was really, really cool because, again, he caught a really big fish. Catching him under this bridge is just different. It was neat, this little run, like I said. And the squall's still going. It's funny how we just had a lot of funny net jobs, the way these fish were moving downstream, trying to go to ice, and I had to dip under Pono's line. As it switched directions, there was 1 or 2 times where Stump was, 1 foot over the one line, another foot over the other line, doing a little hopscotch as these fish are just beelining upstream, downstream, jumping out of the water, hitting that shelf ice, and it was really cool. There's some really neat footage and some good net jobs where we did get them, some that got off because of the craziness, and like I said, it didn't matter. Naturally rotating who's netting fish. We have a couple good-sized steelhead nets, so if someone needs to grab a net and go downstream and help, or upstream and help a guy. And it's just kind of cycling through. There's something fun about netting a fish for your buddy too. There's a lot of things fun about it, and you get to see a lot of different things. Obviously, when everyone's in the fish is what I'm talking about. But that joy of the action in the moment, and then that sigh of relief once it hits the net, and you feel good because you put a sweet scoop on it, and maybe got them their biggest fish in the net of the year or of their life, whatever it is. So I think we were all really enjoying netting each other's fish and enjoying that perspective too. So it's probably like 2 o'clock by now. I'm not really sure. Probably 2 or 3 hours left of daylight. And at this time, you can tell the fish are naturally shutting down. We are foul hooking some more than we have been. Again, that bite was so good, you didn't foul hook that many fish at all for those first 4+ hours. And now we were foul hooking more fish. They weren't biting as much. So then when you're drifting through quite a bit of fish, foul hooks happen more. And we all kind of noticed this. So I think we were kind of slowing down the aggressiveness into trying to catch fish, still working it. And every now and then we'd get a good one in the mouth, whether it was on an egg by Pono, whether it was a purple bead on the bottom. We were still getting them to eat. It was just a lot less frequent at this point. So then conversations were like, do we go upstream? Do we go hunt a little bit more? And we played around with those ideas. We went upstream a little bit. I fished a little bit up there. We kind of moved around, went downstream, hit some of those other little pockets a little bit here and there. But I think we were so happy and content with everything. We were like, if this last hour and a half, 2 hours is slow, then we enjoy that too. We enjoy the ride. If you pick off a fish here and there, wonderful. By the end of the day, I think I landed 7 or 8. A couple, got off on the scoop on the net, whatever the case may be. But we were all in that range. I think Stump caught 8, 9 fish. I know Pono caught something like that. I know Dave caught like 4 or 5, but we were all into double digits. We were all into double-digit fish legitimately. And again, land rates are all over the place. Factors, the type of hole, the conditions, whatever that is, we could go down that road another time. But land rates, statistically, a lot of people say you're landing 30% of these fish. So if you touch 40%, 50% in that range or anywhere higher, with that amount of fish, it doesn't get better. And I think we caught another 1 or 2 as it's tapering off, as that last hour's tapering down. We get to that last light bite, and with the foggy, the kind of snow squall conditions in there, with that haze in the air when it's snowy, it got dark fast. It was getting dark really, really fast in that last hour. But that last light bite did still produce. We still scooped a couple here and there to kind of close it out. But the one thing that did kind of throw another loop into the last hour and a half or so, I was fishing the run, and I think Dave had just released a fish, and he was kind of standing to my back left, had his rod, holding it, playing with his flies or something, not paying attention to, I think, exactly where he was standing. And that happens. I mean, I've broken Stump's rods in the past. I get excited. We don't pay attention fully. It happens. These things happen. You just kind of lose track. You're in the moment. You're focusing on catching fish yourself, releasing it, enjoying that. And we just get distracted. And I think that's what happened. And for that brief second, he was in that spot. And I set to my left shoulder and took it back into his rod. And right away, I'm like, there's a broken rod tip, and it didn't. But when I said that, I didn't even register that it was my rod tip, and it was. And you can see it hanging on my line. It was in between my last 2 loops on my last section. It snapped right in half. It was a perfect disaster. I think I lost the fish, and it was one of those moments though. I had to sit back and take a minute to process. Took a deep breath. Once I did realize that it was my rod tip that was broken. And here's the thing I say, we've talked about this in our prepping and planning, I have a second rod. That's the whole point. You don't go 5-6 hours, you don't go on these trips without having a second tip, a backup plan A, B, and C, and I always do. And sure enough, I was prepared. I had that second rod, the rod that I used my first half of my steelhead fishing career. I love it. So I wasn't worried about it. My trip's not over. No big deal. I can still fish the rest of this weekend. I don't have to fish a broken rod tip or not fish at all. So once I processed that, it was all good. Dave naturally felt really bad about it. I understand where he's coming from too. I reassured him when we had an opportunity to talk about it for a second. Accidents happen, man. We're good. Especially when you're catching that many fish, when you hook into that many fish. It all is easier. Breaking a rod tip is way easier. If I had been skunked all day, I'm not going to lie. I could have been a lot more down in the dumps. I would have been a lot more down in the dumps. It would have probably hit me a lot harder in that moment. Luckily, it was a frenzy of fish. So all good. I had the backup rod, and it was that last hour, and I'm like, do I go back to the truck and re-rig and fish my other rod for this last hour? I'm like, screw it. Screw it. I've done it before. I've caught steelhead with a broken rod tip from way back years ago. I'm letting it ride for that last hour. I just have to pay attention to not having that last guide up there and make sure my line isn't wrapped on that tip. And I landed at least another steelhead or two with a broken rod, which added to that story a little bit, made it even better. Still able to catch fish. So even if I didn't have that backup rod, I would have persevered through the weekend. I caught a couple with a broken rod tip. Then we could joke about it. So it all worked out. It was one of those things, though. It's just like, dang, this is crazy. Like, in the moment, it takes a minute to process something like that. But it was all good. And then, like I said, we fished that last hour or so, scooped a couple in that last light bite, and I think we were all ready. We even closed out 20, 30 minutes early. It was pretty close to dark. I think a stump went back a little early. And we fished it until we were ready to call it and look forward to day 2, do our thing in the evening. So we packed up our normal routine, back to the Airbnb, showered up, changed up, went to our burger spot, and they hit so good like always. Some wings, burgers, fries. We were watching some football, NFL playoffs. Stump's a Broncos fan, so that worked out for him. So it was a good time. So a couple beers, burgers, back to the Airbnb after that, a couple more beers, kept watching the football game, chilling, reminiscing on the day, how great of a time we had. Really, we were riding high. You can't go to bed feeling better than that on a steelhead trip, especially late winter. And that's where we were mentally, just in this awesome spot and ready to go. And then we were getting ready, talking about how do we want to play day 2. It was going to get much, much colder. Temps were already dropping. I think the highs were going to be high teens the rest of the weekend. It was only going to get colder. We knew that going in, that Saturday was going to most likely be our best day to catch fish because of conditions. But we're like, hey, we'll go explore. We'll check out those fish, see if they cooled off from the storm that we just brought to them. And then that'll give us incentive to keep searching and obviously breaking more ice and hopefully being able to work water. We were kind of worried about where slush would be, how our drifts are going to turn into, but we're on the gravy train. After this, everything is all gravy. It really didn't matter what happened. Do you want to get skunked on a full day? No, but we hit it so good, it didn't matter. It was all gravy from there, and everything else was going to be good. So mentally, we're prepping, getting ready for day 2, and kind of gearing up for that, and that's where we start. So hit the hay. I think we were going to sleep in a little bit that next morning because of how cold it was going to be. No super big rush. We weren't worried about too many people, especially early in the morning. The only time we saw people this first day was late in the evening, like we said. So anyway, day 2 coming up. That's going to close us out for part 1 of our Trip 3 recap, episode 11. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to finish up this second half of the trip in our next episode. Get ready. It's fun, man. It was a very different day on Sunday. It was insanely cold, but we still had a lot of fun. There were some really good moments we all got into fish, not quite as many, but found a bunch of fish as well in some new spots, and we made it work and had to battle slush, had to really push through some tough conditions on Sunday, but they were still hungry, fresh fish, and it was another great day. Looking forward to talking about part 2 of it with you all in episode 12, and this is where we're going to close out season 1 of the Steelhead Alley podcast. We're going to finish with 12 episodes, so part 1 here, part 2 coming up after this one. And then there's going to be a break in between, ready for season 2. We'll dive into that, get into that for spring, start a trout season, kind of move into that mode for season 2. And then after that, that will lead into season 3, back into steelhead seasons. 10 to 12 episodes, I'm thinking, per season, a couple seasons a year, move through that. And I didn't know how I wanted to play this. I'm putting a break in between so I can dive into my videos. I'm close with my first video, but I just don't have the time. I do all the editing for the podcast. I do the editing and recording for the videos as well. I'm editing everything. I'm cutting it up and, doing all of it, which I thoroughly enjoy. But because of that, I figured a little time off, and that'll keep me motivated as well. I don't want to burn out, 10 to 12 episodes per season, depending on whether it's trout season or steelhead season. And then hopefully here in the next few weeks, you'll see some of my videos starting to go live on YouTube. So be on the lookout for that. Thanks for tuning in. As always, if you're getting out on the water, good luck out there. Tight lines. Have a great day. Stay warm, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. Steelhead Alley Podcast. We'll see you all in a couple weeks. Thanks, everybody.